In fact, so we're live. Our neighbor's cat has figured out that our bird feeder is just easy pickings, and so we catch him all the time, slouching around our bird feeder, waiting to prey on baby birds, and he gets
Oh
them all the
no.
time. So we're getting one of those sprinklers those motion activated sprinklers we're going to set it up so that whenever the cat makes its way up, you'll get this surprise.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. It's too bad that this is the reality is like like outdoor cats are murderers. And at the same
Yeah.
time, I think to not let a cat go outside is to put them in prison. So
S-
I'm
Have you seen the people that do cat chicken coops?
no,
It's like they'll do a run that it's like a large area that then has a domed over mesh so the cat has outdoor experience, but other than the bugs and stuff that fit through the mesh,
right. It,
they're good.
yeah, so it can't go on the murder spree. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. It's a tough thing. I like now having I used to have cats, and I used to
Uh-huh.
want them to be outside all the time because they just seem so happy. Like they just love it, right? They come and they go and they do their thing, and you think, oh well, this is the perfect cat life. But at the same time, you just I watch this cat just snag a baby pine siskin from my bird feeder and run home, and you're like, oh yeah, like we've just made a shooting gallery for a cat. So it's tough. And it's weird because and so I think if a cat can't go outside, I think they go crazy. So
No, it depends on the cat.
yeah,
And it
yeah,
yeah, there are plenty of cats that are like, that's scary out there. I do not want to
yeah.
go
Those
there.
yeah, I think that's what you want. You want a cat that is chill and just does not
You
want
want
to
an
go out.
agoraphobic cat.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, and they're out there, boy. You can totally get your hands on one of those. I'm going to say hi to a bunch of people. Hello to Oldred, Andy Cowley, Anti Gravity Nonsense, Arnold Post, Beth Johnson, Bill Sugden, Coalfire, Graham W., Guido Bieber, John Drake, John Suffield, John Victor, Linda Sadiq, Nancy Graziano, Nichols of the Yard, PsychoCat749, Ryan Schmidt, Scott Bragdon, Sean Kenny, Susie Murph, Tech Tang, Tom Van Scotter, Umu, Von Lichtenbutz, Wayne Johnson, and Zapvan Zapvan. Hey, everybody. Just in the future, if you want me to say your name at the beginning of the show, all you have to do is just say hi in the YouTube chat, and then that adds you to the list of participants, sorts you into alphabetic order, and lets me say hi to you. So hello, and to the people who did not say hello, hello anyway. So administration here. This is our penultimate episode. One more
And
next
then the
week.
ones that we record when we're at Joshua Tree, which will be of unknown number. So this is
Yes,
our penultimate studio recording.
correct. Yeah, and then next week we will record the final episode of this season, season 11,
The final studio recording.
the final studio recording, and then we will really try hard to gather up a bunch of really cool stuff while we're at Joshua Tree, and we're all together, right? So
Yes.
we're and
Yeah.
hopefully this stuff will just pour into various feeds, just like summer holiday gifts as we go. I mean, we'll probably have some arguments about space mining. I think asteroid mining. I'm sure we'll talk about. Um, I don't know
We're
anything.
doing a show on everyday relativity.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a presentation on astrophotography with Dustin. Yeah, so there's gonna be all kinds of great stuff. So this will be fun. For those of you who are gonna be there, I can't wait to see you. For those who not, I hope you really enjoy all of the media that we bring back. This will be of value to you as well. Um, I think that's it for the administrivia, and then my last I've got two more open spaces before I go, so we'll be doing that on my YouTube channel next week and the week after that. And then I think we've got one more episode of the weekly Space Hangout,
Cool.
LIGO, which is going to be cool. Let's see. I think that's it. Any other administrivia? My telescope
Go
is sort
map
of.
rocks on Bennu?
I was looking at Jupiter last night, and so the
Oh, and it's
telescope's.
right on the horizon.
Yeah, yeah. So it's totally messed up. The problem is I
That
haven't.
is one heck of an eyepiece,
It's a
though.
beautiful eyepiece. It's a
That's a
gigantic.
teleview, isn't it?
It's not at Teleview, but it is sort of in the same class. So it's just it's a monster piece of glass that I put on it because I really love those big. It's a 2-inch eyepiece, and I really love that amount of glass. You just fall into the sky, but the problem is even Jupiter. You can't even see the bands on the planet because it's so tiny in the eyepiece. You can see the planet, you can see the moons of Jupiter, but it's teeny tiny.
I have to turn on my fan. The dog just did something. I can't breathe.
Oh.
You. Oh, God.
All right.
Sorry, that was just a bomb, an air bomb, a
Yeah.
poison, noxious air bomb.
We our dog has that problem as well. She before we got her, she had some kind of she ate a rope and it got stuck in her like a chunk of a rope and it got like she was in so the person who owned the dog before us, he was saying that yeah, the dog was in cage with a toy and the toy like a rope toy and the toy was gone. And and then he came back and yeah, so then he and then she wasn't eating and she wasn't doing well, so she had to get surgery and have a chunk of her intestine removed. And since then, she is the gassiest dog. She's a gas-powered dog, never runs out of gas.
Yeah. No, we're just switching dog foods. I have a foster dog, and she's now on different food, and that has side effects.
Yeah, sure does.
She's sweet, but oh wow, that was one of a kind. Okay.
Should we do
opening
should
my
we do a show? Yeah.
Sorry, that was just, I don't know if you've ever been like, you deserve a prize or to go away, and I don't know which.
Yeah. By the way, I love your shirt.
It's
I've
for those of you.
I've shared like after you shared the picture of the shirt to Twitter, I think I've been sharing it with many friends. It says, let me just put you on the screen here. Go back.
I don't always
go back.
test
Sorry, go back a bit so we can't quite see it. Keep going. Keep going. Stand up a little bit. Here we go. Let's see. No, I can't. We can't quite see it because
Okay.
I've got your screen. There you go. There you go. I don't always test my code, but when I do it in production. And anyone who's ever worked in software, computers,
Web dev in particular,
knows that is bad. That is the wrong way to test your code. You need.
But with Bennu mappers, we've been periodically been like, oh shit, we need to make this change, and we've just been doing it in production.
Yeah. No, it always happens. No, you always get to a point where something is broken. You need to fix it, and if you're lucky, you fix holds, and if you're unlucky, the whole thing breaks. So it's the kind of Russian roulette that you like to play. All right, let me know when you are ready.
Okay, I am ready.
I've pressed record.
I have two, and it is not using the correct microphone.
No.
Dear Audacity, how? Why?
I'm going to stop my recording.
Yeah.
It's great that you even noticed. It's the worst when you record the whole episode and it turns out it was your webcam for the whole time.
Yeah. That is the mistake I have made oh so very many times. All right. It now says it's doing the right things mostly.
Okay. I'm recording as well again. Hello, Susie. Even though you watch this live, hello again. It's me from the past thanking you for doing the editing on Astronomy Cast.
Thank you.
Here we go. Astronomy Cast, episode 534, Modern South African Astronomy. Welcome to Astronomy Cast, our weekly facts-based journey through the cosmos, where we help you understand not only what we know, but how we know what we know. I'm Fraser Cain, publisher of Universe Today. With me, as always, Dr. Pamela Gay, a senior scientist for the Planetary Science Institute and the director of CosmoQuest. Hey, Pamela, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Great. Here we are, our penultimate episode, our penultimate live studio episode that we are recording from our home studios during season 11. So there's this episode, and the next week, I don't even know if we have a topic for next week yet, but, and then we will wrap up for the summer. However, we are going to be at the All Stars party. We're going to be with our friends, and we're going to be with a bunch of our other space uh, podcast creators. And so we
Yeah.
will be creating all kinds of content with them, and we will be dropping a ton of this into the feed. So stay tuned. You're going to get a lot. Even though if you can't join us, you at least get as if you were there with some of the conversations that we had while we were there. So
Educational astronomy on the go silliness
yeah,
will be coming your way.
yeah, exactly. All right, you know the drill now. Last week we talked about some ancient South African astronomy. So this week we're talking about the modern state of astronomy in the southern part of Africa, which happens to be a great place with nice dark skies and a perfect view into the heart of the galaxy. Now, I haven't been to South Africa. Have you? You
Yes.
have.
It's fabulous.
Yeah.
And I really recommend it as the kind of place that brings some hope, because there's a lot of nations right now that you visit, my own included, where you get the sense of a nation on decline. You get a sense of a whole bunch of people who've lost hope and are just forlornly watching the world burn. Well, when I was in South Africa in 2010, this was the first generation of adults that had grown up with apartheid ending, with opportunity on the rise,
Yeah.
with people of different colors all able to mix in the cities. And the amount of poverty was great, but the amount of hope was great as well. And one of the things that they've been working to do is, this has been a technologically advanced nation, and they're now looking to advance all the people of their nation through science. And astronomy is one of the places that they're putting a great deal of effort, because it gives them an excuse to get amazing infrastructure into remote parts of their countryside.
Yeah. And I mean, I haven't been to Southern Africa. I have been into the Southern Hemisphere now, and so I've
Yeah.
got to assume that the view of the skies from South Africa is as amazing as the view from Australia. Dark skies,
Yes.
away from light pollution, staring into the core of the galaxy.
But the difference is the wildlife. So in Australia, you have to worry that something deadly
Yeah, something
is going to be
venomous.
on the ground when you sit down. So maybe you don't sit on the grass. In South Africa, out at Sutherland Observatory, a whole group of us decided we were going to walk up from the visitor center to the main observatory at the peak of the mountain. And we did this after dark because we're astronomers and morons, and just settled on the side of the observatory road so that none of the astronomers leaving the mountain to go to sleep would run us over. And we didn't have flashlights. We didn't want to ruin anyone's observing. So as the sun came up, we realized we had sat down in the middle of a herd of springbok.
Right.
And so all of these giant antlered, giant jumping critters wake up, and they're like, what is this strange thing? And one of them came over and was like flaring its nostrils at one of the cameras that we had on an automatic timer. And it was just this amazing experience to see the zodiacal light get bright and the sun come up, and then to realize you're in a herd of wild animals.
Yeah. Some of my favorite astronomy power couple comes from South Africa, Corey and Tanya Schmitz from Photographing Space, and the pictures that they are just sending back are stunning. So, I cannot wait to get a chance to head down to South Africa. Let's talk about observatories then. It's not just we who have suspect it's a great place for astronomy. The astronomical community is pretty certain as well. So what are some of the observatories and facilities that are there in Africa?
Well, here we're focusing on South Africa with a touch of nations around it. So we're going to start in the city of Cape Town, where you have the Royal Observatory of the Cape of Good Hope that is built up on a hill in a part of Cape Town that's called Observatory. And one of the really amazing things about this part of the city is it was one of the areas that, even during apartheid, allowed the mixing of races. This was what was called a gray area of the city. It's student housing. It's kind of, think about that super weird and trendy neighborhood near your favorite large university campus. And you kind of have this area, but maybe with like a touch of Haight Ashbury thrown into the mix. Now, the observatory itself was built in 1820. This is one of the great historic observatories that was put there so that they could figure out when they were. So just like with the Sydney Observatory, this is a facility that once upon a time had a large telescope and was responsible for figuring out latitude and longitude so they could literally accurately put Cape Town on the map. Now, Cape Town has kind of grown since 1820. The light pollution has more than kind of grown since 1820. And so, with all of those changes and with a desire to have one of the best observing facilities in the Southern Hemisphere, starting in the 1970s, they began moving the nation's telescopes that were at universities and other random places out to Sutherland.
So how far away is Sutherland?
It's a several-hour drive to the north and east from Cape Town. It takes you through some of the oldest landscape in the world. You can actually see chaotic terrain where the land is flipped up and you can see the iridium line through the sedimentary layers that marks "Here be dead dinosaurs."
Right. That's
and
amazing.
there are baboons along the way. Beware the baboons; they're freaky. Um, and then once you get out to Sutherland, this is not just a great place for professional astronomy, but they also do astrotourism, and it's a dark sky preserve. So once you get out there's all of the normal small town countryside things that you'll find anywhere that is yearning to be a tourist trap. But once you get up to the top of the mountain, there are 15 different domes up on that plateau.
And so, I mean, we've seen how this plays out. Some small ones, some big ones, and some very big ones.
Yeah. And like so many other places, what we also see is the history of the development of astronomy. One of my favorite telescopes that they have up there, because the data from it is near and dear to me, is the Allen Cousins telescope. This is just a 30-inch telescope. Doesn't sound all that tremendous, 75 centimeters. But this particular telescope, if you've ever heard of like the Cousins filters, the precision photometry, that photometric system was defined for the Southern Hemisphere using this telescope. So if you ever needed to use standard stars to figure out how bright something was in the Southern Hemisphere, you owe a thank you to this little 30-inch telescope.
That's really cool. I mean, there are planet hunting telescopes, there are sky surveys, and
Yeah.
there's one very, very big telescope, the SALT telescope. So let's talk about some of the other instruments that you can find at this one place. I mean, there is a level of concentration of astronomical equipment in this one location
Yeah.
greater than, I think, in any of the places that we've talked about. They're more spread out in
Yes.
other areas, but in Southern Africa, they are right
This
here.
peak,
This is the
they're
place.
all
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So like most big observatories, there is, of course, the Las Cumbres Observatory Global Telescope Network, telescope. It's a 39-inch telescope, part of the network, been there since 2013. So your standard player is, of course, there.
So sorry. What I mean, I don't think we talked too much about the Les Combres. What are they doing?
So Les Combres is a network of telescopes scattered across pretty much the entire planet. So there is no part of the sky that can go unseen at any time of day is the ultimate goal. And they're everything from telescopes that teachers can get time on for their classrooms to regular everyday people can rent them to they're also used for a variety of just low photometric need science projects. So things like follow up on supernovae, monitoring of asteroids, follow up on things where your needs are, is this thing's orbit still what we thought before we snuggle up our spacecraft? So they did follow up on Rosetta, on the asteroid Rosetta went to Sherry Geary. So it's just a really cool network that is pretty much, if you have a good mountaintop, you're going to have one of their telescopes.
Yeah, there's one in McDonald Observatory, one at Haleakala in Hawaii, in the Canary Islands. So they are really across the world. It's such a great idea that they've got a series of telescopes that can literally track an object from hemisphere to hemisphere, wherever and whenever you need to, which is such a wonderful concept. And I know you can, they do give, I think they're the ones that give time to interesting outreach, educational projects and things like that.
And the this particular network of telescopes has gone through many different phases. It started as the Falks telescopes, funded out of Great Britain by a man named Falks. He couldn't fund it to get as large as the goal. It evolved into the Les Combres system. Google got in for a while, funding a lot of it. And so this has really been a long-term effort with a whole lot of people seeing the need and helping us scatter telescopes hither and yon, essentially. Now, other things that you might have heard of. We have talked about Celt objects on a fairly steady basis across all of the years. These are the kilodegree, extremely little telescopes. The first one was built by the Ohio State University to monitor the Northern Hemisphere. Now we also have a Southern Hemisphere version, and these are survey telescopes that are out plugging away looking for exoplanets. So you have things like Kelt 9b, which is a extremely hot exoplanet that I'm particularly fond of that was found with this system.
Let's talk about the big one.
You're like, we're just gonna skip WASP and everything else.
No, you know what? No, I appreciate the way you're setting this up. Yeah, let's talk about WASP.
Okay, so WASP is another one of these robotic telescopes that is out there looking for exoplanets. And one of the things that I appreciate about this, which is why I wanted to bring it up, is this is a telescope that has multiple incarnations around the world. And in this case, it's a joint venture between the Canaries and South Africa. And they are also pulling up little planet after little planet orbiting distant stars. We also have a variety of monitoring systems to do things like monitor for incoming near-Earth objects. We have systems that are designed to monitor the sun, helping to detect the oscillations that we see in its atmosphere. And now we can go to SALT.
Okay, because this is a very big telescope.
And this one, I have to admit, is a bittersweet telescope to me, because I went to the University of Texas where they built the Hobby Eberly telescope, which I was supposed to use to do amazing science for my dissertation. The goal when I wrote my dissertation was we were going to get 30 spectra per galaxy cluster after galaxy cluster. And we're going to do detailed studies of how these systems were evolving as a function of mass and redshift. And about 10 years later, another astronomer got an amazing award for doing a dissertation on this, because mine was blighted by the Hobby Eberly telescope not functioning the way it was supposed to function.
Right. So,
And
so you didn't want to use that telescope. It was
I
broken.
no,
Yeah.
no. So I ended up with like 9 spectra total on 2 clusters for my dissertation. Um, so the Hobby Eberly telescope had issues when it was first constructed. It was designed to be the largest, cheapest telescope of its kind. The original budget was $15 million to build what would be, at the time, the largest light gathering telescope in optical wavelengths in the world. And it was. It just could only stay in focus for like 10 to 20 minutes.
Right.
And it was thought that they'd be able to do monitoring of how the mirrors flexed and changed as temperature and humidity changed. But it was actually a chaotic problem. So their original plan to use computer models to keep the telescope in focus by measuring humidity and temperature variations and flexing the system accordingly, it didn't work. And so the last couple of years that I was finishing up my PhD, the observatory was invaded by South African engineers because they came, and in exchange for the plans for the Hobby Eberly telescope and more complexity things, they came in and put in tremendous effort to help get that telescope working. And now the Hobby Eberly is a workhorse. And from what they learned, helping to get the Hobby Eberly to live up to its full potential, they took everything they learned, returned to South Africa, and built what it is still the largest collecting area telescope in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah.
And they've been using it to do tremendous science. So this is a case of really clever engineers saying, we don't have a whole lot of budget, but we've got a whole lot of skill. So let us fix that for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's right. And so, I mean, this telescope, again, you know, it is, it's a 10-meter telescope. So when we think about the Keck observatories,
But the mirror is 11.
yeah, the
It's
mirror,
a
right,
fixed azimuth telescope.
and it's this weird collection of hexagonal elements all collected together, and so you don't. So it's not this one single ground mirror. It's these hexagonal elements that work together to form the mirror, and so it was done exactly right. It was done on the cheap, and yet it is an 11-meter telescope. And so again, compare that. You've got the Keck Observatory at 10 meters. You've got the very large telescope, the individual telescopes. They're only 8.5 meters. The Geminis, like the only thing that really gets close size-wise is you've got the one in the Canary Islands, which is 11 meters, and then you've got the ones, the binocular telescope, which we talked about a few weeks back.
But those are both northern hemisphere.
But they're both in the northern hemisphere, and so there is a telescope that is easily one of the largest telescopes in the Earth, you know, on the Earth, located in this prime location that has the skies all to itself. So it's like if you want to do astronomy from the southern hemisphere, there is just a phenomenal tool at your disposal, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah,
and
it's
they did it
super clever design.
Yeah.
So the way they keep the costs down on the design is the telescope is at a fixed tilt, and there is a smooth cement donut that the telescope has these airlifts. So think Luke Skywalker's craft on Tatooine. They lift the telescope and they can rotate it, but they can't change its tilt, but they can move the secondary mirror.
Right.
So they're able to track objects for brief periods of time. You're not going to track all night. You're going to track for like 20 minutes. But they're able to track, and as they track, they're using a different 10-meter-ish section of that 11-meter mirror that has a spherical surface. And so they're able to greatly reduce the costs by not having to engineer in the ability to change the tilt of the telescope. So they can just rotate
Yeah.
and then they can move around the secondary. And
And
that's enough.
if you want to think of an analogy, we've talked about the Arecibo Observatory, which is a radio telescope in Puerto Rico, and it is it's a segment of a sphere carved
Yeah.
out of like a collapsed crater, on Puerto Rico, and
Yeah.
so they move the instrumentation on cables that
Yeah.
hangs up above the telescope, and that's how they get data on different parts. So as long as this thing is kind of in the field of view, then they can move the instrumentation and capture imagery. And it's the same thing on what they do with this telescope. So it doesn't work the way a regular telescope does, but for what it does it better than almost any other instrument on Earth. And I've always been a gigantic fan of this specific telescope because they did it on a shoestring and they run it on
Yeah.
a shoestring. And
Yeah.
for tens of millions of dollars in ongoing budget to run this world-class observatory. So
Yeah.
congrats to everyone in South Africa. You should be really proud of this telescope that's operating there.
And they need to be really proud of what is coming.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we're
So
talking big telescopes.
so Sutherland is where all of the optical is done. But if you go out to Karoo, which is a different deserty part that is truly stunning with magnificent animals, if you go out to Karoo, which is a bit further to the east and a little bit further to the north, you are going to run in to an array of 64 13.5-meter dishes that are currently out there in this vast swath of plains. They have an inner cluster that is spread over a not very large area. It's about 1 kilometer across. But then for another 4 kilometers in all directions, they have another 30% of their dishes scattered. This particular pattern is fairly unique to this set of telescopes. This is the MeerKAT array.
Yes.
This is a precursor to the SKA that is testing the science, proving the technology, and already doing some really phenomenal science. And when they start building SKA, it's not going to be limited to this 8-meter diameter area of deserty landscape. No, SKA is going to span across multiple nations as they build what will be half of the greatest radio facility in the world across southern Africa. And this is why they talk about the next International Astronomical Union meeting after Korea is going to be in southern Africa, because they're holding it in Cape Town. But it's going to be hosted by all these different nations that are working together, collaborating together to do radio astronomy that will have, from one telescope, amazing resolution thanks to one giant continent.
Yeah, and we talked about this 2 weeks ago from the Australian perspective. And the great thing about the MeerKAT observatories is that these are some of the technologies that they tested out and demonstrated, both that Southern Africa would be a good spot to house the square kilometer array, but also that they had the technological chops to
Yeah.
do this kind of astronomy, that the engineers and the designers and the
The
astronomers,
engineering and the materials all came.
yeah, it's all world class.
And it's locally built. This is locally built, not half of it came from Germany. No, it's them rocking it out. And now astronomers from around the world are doing astronomy with the best sets of acronyms I have ever seen.
Such as?
So I just had to bring this up. MeerKAT is, of course, an acronym itself. And it has led to mongoose, spelled really weirdly, MHONGOOSE. which is the MeerKAT H1 observations of nearby galactic objects, observing southern emitters. It's a little bit forced, but awesome. There is MeerGAL, which is the MeerKAT High Frequency Galactic Plane Survey. There's MIGHTY, which is the MeerKAT International Gigahertz Tiered Extragalactic Exploration Survey. There is ThunderCAT, the hunt for dynamic and explosive radio transmitters with MeerKAT. It's just amazing thing after amazing thing with amazing acronyms. So go team go.
Yeah. Were there any other interesting instruments from other wavelengths? Isn't there a Cherenkov radiation observatory in southern Africa?
I'm
trying to remember.
Checking.
Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe not.
So they're members of the Cherenkov telescope array, but I'm not seeing it as being built there. The big one is in south of Paranal. There is a Nambia South African Cherenkov telescope task force.
Okay. Yeah,
or Namibia. Namibia.
I recall there being one there, but no. Cool. Well, I think we've reached the end of our time anyway. But I think again, if you want an interesting vacation, if you want to go to a place that's up and coming on the astronomy scene, it sounds like South Africa is the place to go. Just avoid the dangerous wildlife while you're looking up at the night sky.
So go to Cape Town and do two things for me in addition to the astronomy. One, go on a wine tour. There's actually a winery called Goats de Rome that is the result of not being able to be Côtes de Rhône anymore because of EU regulations. And you can do a wine and goat cheese tasting. It is fabulous. In addition to this, go to the beach that has both penguins and baboons and break your brain because no children's coloring book prepared any of us for penguins and baboons to be co-located in the wild as natural things to laugh at on a beach. But be aware the baboons will try and break into your camera gear.
Right. That sounds awesome. Do you have some names for us this week, Pamela?
I just might do that. So today's names. We have Bill Hamilton, Greg Thorwald, Frederick Hagny Kvan Jensen, Helga Bjorkog, Kjartan Sarvra.
This is awesome. I love this. Keep going.
Joseph Hoy, Dana Norrie, Emily Patterson, Paul Jarman, Joss Cunningham, Corey DeValley, Les Howard, Laura Kittleson, Robert Palsama, The Giant Nothing, Brian Cagle, David Troig, Andrew Polstra, Ramji and Matu, Burry Gowan, and Jordan Young. Thank you for being our patrons, and all the rest of you. If you really want to help us out and you want to help us keep this show going and expanding, join us on Patreon. I will be releasing content throughout the summer, or at least letters letting you know what all we're up to that have pictures included.
Yeah.
So thank you. We're here because of you.
The great thing about Patreon is that only a small group of people need to support what we do so that we can make this information available to everyone around the world, that we don't have to put it behind a paywall, that we can just make it freely available, which is the goal of science, of education and information. And so thank you to all the patrons. And if you're sitting on the fence and wondering, will I make a difference? You will totally make a difference. You will allow us to create more content. And whether it's even through Astronomy Cast or through our personal Patreons, through mine through Universe Today and Pamela through Star Strider, you make a difference on allowing us to create content, to pay our teams to be able to come up with new ideas and to dedicate our lives to educating the world about space and astronomy. So thank you.
Yeah, and you'd really be surprised at just how far things go. Um, since we've not had the NASA funding that we've had in the past, my Patreon is what pays for all of my software and servers every month, and that just makes me functional.
Yeah.
So that one thing allows me to do everything else that I do. Um, it's everything when you support us.
Yeah, and I mean, same for me, right? Every penny that we earn from Patreon, I just spend on writers and editors and etc. So that's how we are able to make more content. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. We will see you all next week.
Goodbye. But don't go anywhere because we're just going to save.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hard drive is filling up. I haven't deleted an episode since the late 400s. They're just piling up on my drive. Yeah, I got to clean this up. I'll do that. Maybe I'll do that over the summer. That'll be fun.
It's always good to have goals.
Yay. Clean my hard drive.
This is going to sound horrible. I want to take a month off just to clean my house. Like top to bottom, rearrange things, get the dust bunnies out from underneath bookcases.
Yep.
I just want a month to just clean my house and listen to audiobooks.
You can do both at the same time.
Yes.
You do have a lot of stuff.
I need to work on this.
There's a lot of, I'm always impressed. I'm like whatever is the opposite of a hoarder. So I can't stand stuff, and my kids think it's hilarious that I'm like I'll want to throw things away even when they're like holding on to them. Are you done with that? Do we need that anymore? So yeah, I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
I tend to get rid of stuff pretty quickly. Although I do have, as I was mentioning before talking to you, I've got a collection of audio and camera gear that I need to sell and get rid of. So
I'm this weird mix of I'm married to someone who collects so many things.
Yeah.
And I was raised that you don't throw anything out if it possibly can be used. And so I Goodwill a ton of stuff, but like cables, USB cables,
You're good.
I haven't figured out what is the maximum number you're allowed to own yet.
Right. I must have been like 5 years ago. I went through that and I just gathered up all the stuff into a box and then just went onto like Facebook Marketplace or something like that and just had a free box of random computer junk. And a bunch of people came and picked it up and took it away within an hour. And it was just...
Yeah, my husband collected fish tanks for a while. Like he had fish in them and he was doing aquascaping. Right. And I think at our maximum, we had like 16 fish tanks in our house. Yeah. And I've got us down to 3. You can see 2 of them.
Yep.
And my turtle, which is a different issue. But we still have all the old fish tanks. And I thought that like some of them had gotten given away, but then I was cleaning the basement and I opened a cabinet and it was like, I found fish tanks that I had no idea we still had. So there's going to be a Facebook marketplace binging of fish tanks.
Yeah. That's a good way to do it. It's the stuff that's in that sort of tough spot where it's got some value and so you don't just want to give it away.
Yeah.
Like I've got my old Canon 5D Mark II camera and it's probably worth about say $500. So I'm going to sell it, but
yeah.
And I can't just give it away. Although maybe I can save it and give it to my kids or I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
So.
And then there's stuff like power supplies where you're always like, someday I might need this particular kind of power supply.
Yep. And I do. I have some boxes just filled with cables and power supplies and USB devices and stuff. And I think, if you can't close the top of the box, then you can get rid of whatever, is preventing the box from being able to close. That's how you measure.
I was going to say, I have a limiting volume.
Yeah.
All of my electronics that are not in current use must fit in one small closet, along with all of my travel electronic adapters and such.
Behind that door behind me is definitely a mountain of stuff that needs to be gotten rid of. Hit us if you have some questions. We would love to hear them.
I have a very sleepy puppy that just came in.
Anti-gravity nonsense asks, Dr. Pamela, if a nation is starting in the space race, which telescope would you advise them to build as the first one?
I would actually encourage them to join one of the multinational collaborations because most telescopes don't belong to just one place or one people. There are exceptions. MeerKAT was built by South Africa as a South African multi-Southern African collaboration. But then you have things where, like, it's built into the name. The Wind Telescope is, I believe, the Wyoming, Yale, Win, Nebraska. No, NOAO is the N. I'm missing one of the letters, but there's many of these telescopes that have it baked into the name that they're either multinational, multi-institutional, and by getting in on one of these collaborations, you can really get a lot more bang from your buck and also get mentors to help you figure out how is it that you produce great science out of these telescopes, because it's possible to build a great telescope and just mismanage it into not doing great science.
Yeah. So, for example, as a member of the European Union, you get access to the European Southern Observatory. And so all the member nations pay X million dollars. I think like Ireland pays 2 million euros a year, and they get access to their slice of time on the European Southern Observatory. And so to just pay a couple of $1 million to be able to access one of these gigantic observatories is totally worth it, and probably the best bang for your buck to go. So yeah, if you are a developing nation and you're looking to get some good science going, join one of these international collaborations.
And one of the great ways that Chile, South Africa, and historically different states here in the US that weren't as advanced, the way they got their footing was they said, hey, we have this great location. Come build here, and we'll be the custodians of the facility, by which I mean not just the people who clean, but the people who care for the facility. So McDonald Observatory was built for the University of Chicago initially. And it was through the fullness of time that it became a University of Texas facility.
Paul Disney asks, how's Bennu mapping going?
It is going well. We're slowly creeping up on the halfway mark, I think. Let me open up the site. We have until July 10th to get through all the images. We currently have 2,610 images left. We are at 1,458 images completed, and we still have a few more images to add into the system as data continues.
Right. They're still mapping. They just broke a record for the closest orbit to an asteroid. So they just got within 650 meters of Bennu and are going to be sending back.
Yeah, now that data isn't going into us. It's just the pipeline of data that we're using isn't fully uploaded yet. So yeah, it's getting exciting. So come join us. We have an active community over on Discord with CosmoQuest X. So yeah, bennu.cosmoquest.org. Come be part of doing the science. I'm really looking forward to emailing out to the people who happen by the luck of the draw to have mapped out the regions that get targeted as potential sites to go grab soil.
I've done a bunch of big pitches for Bennu. I included a big mention of it in my newsletter this week. So hopefully you guys got a bunch of new voluntolds. So Gordon Dewis asked, does Canada have access to the ESO since we're involved with the ESA? So I don't think Canada is part of the European Southern Observatory, but maybe.
I don't know.
We have access.
Purchase their own time.
Well, we have the Gemini telescopes, Gemini North and Gemini South. So I don't know.
Yeah, and that's a telescope that ran into political mess because it was also Great Britain was one of the major partners, and Great Britain just backed out of it.
So no, I don't think we're part of the European Southern Observatory in Canada. Sean Kinney's asking,
fancy pants EU passports that aren't actually EU passports.
Us, Canada?
Yeah, you have the same photographic requirements as an EU passport.
Like the size of the, yeah, right. They're
Yeah,
like a different size.
you
No,
must show one ear, and yeah,
you can't smile.
right,
And the
right.
size of the thing, yeah, we Carla had to get her passport redone, and it's totally different stuff. But she's here in Canada, so she had to go and get her
Yeah,
U.S. passport photo taken, and she had all the requirements, and she and the person working at the taking the passport photo had to work through all of the specific requirements to make sure that she had taken the picture that was what they would require. And the hilarious thing is
right.
picture ended up being not great. I'm surprised they took it because it was just like it was a little dark, like it was cropped in a way that I think they just weren't used to taking a picture like that. So I'm actually
Yeah,
amazed that she got her passport updated, um, which was important because she's going to be joining us down in California. So
right.
she needed to have her passport ready to go. So Sean Kenny asks, "What's up with fast in China?" I googled, and there's not much news. Have you heard any updates on
I
the
haven't heard.
fast?
Yeah, this is a question I'm getting all the time. I know nothing.
Thanks, Google. That is funny. What, um, for people who don't know, FAST is a
It is
gigantic radio
the
telescope in China.
Yeah, so think Arecibo, but built on Chinese scales. So think New York City, but Shanghai scale. Um, that kind of just scale everything up a lot. It is supposed to be the new predominant uh, telescope for doing single dish, so super sensitive, not a lot of resolution, single beam astronomy. And yeah, I just haven't heard anything out of it yet, but it's still early days. I think it's only been turned on for like a year, maybe.
But I heard that they had run into some budgetary issues. They were having trouble staffing it or finding astronomers who would want to work on it. I'm not really exactly sure what was going on. It's a good question.
Yeah.
Um, John Seffield says, "If you look like your passport photo, you're too ill to travel." That's awesome. Let's see. Any other questions? We've got about 5 minutes remaining. Have you got any other interesting things that you're working on? What's coming
We
up?
are working on a couple of major research papers on the ethics of citizen science and the behaviors of citizen scientists through all the various things we've put them through over the course of CosmoQuest's evolution. And I am coding my brains out working to put CosmoQuest open source this summer.
So that other people can run citizen science projects like CosmoQuest?
Well, and also so that every time someone is just like, hey, it would be awesome if, I can be like, can you help? So that's one of the brilliant things about open source projects is sure, other people can also run the code, but people can also say, here are these awesome features, let me contribute. And some people don't want to mark rocks and measure boulders,
They,
and
they
they
want to,
just want to write code.
right.
And I get that.
And
I
want
like
that.
those people.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Those are good people to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to be working on doing more and more open source software over time with CosmoQuest,
John Drake
all aimed at
asks how your trip was.
uh, so I was in Pittsburgh last weekend to go to the American Humanist Society's meeting.
Why were
Um,
you there, Pamela?
I I'm the 2019 Isaac Asimov Scientist Award recipient.
Nice work.
Okay. Um, what I learned is the University of Pittsburgh and Carnegie Mellon University are like totally touching and intersecting and have the coolest architecture of any universities I have ever been to. And I used to work at Harvard. Um, University of Pittsburgh has a tower of learning that is a giant Gothic architecture building that looks like it was stolen out of Superman. And it's just this amazing campus that I had great fun wandering around on one evening while catching Pokemon, as you do.
What level Pokemon are you in
I'm like
Pokemon Go?
31, 32.
31? I'm like 22.
You don't walk your dogs enough.
I do. I walk a lot. I just haven't been playing Pokemon. I picked it up again recently because it's not terrible anymore.
It's true.
It
It's
it
true.
was terrible before. So, but
Yeah.
yeah. But my we went we went on a walk last night, and it was just like Pokemon Gym Central, and there was a lot of poorly defended gyms that I just
Oh
destroyed,
yeah.
and
I like take so yeah, the amount of pleasure I get. I mean, like I can pwn that gym by myself.
yeah, to send
And
in
I
one of
know
your
it's just like
thugs.
owned by 9-year-olds and I'm just destroying
Yeah,
9-year-olds.
make them
But
cry.
yeah, it's what I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Dustin King asks, is there any way to make a 2D picture of the sky with gravitational wave observatories?
Not yet.
What is he asking, though?
So using gravitational waves from all the objects that are out there radiating energy to map out the mass distribution.
Hmm.
That's how I interpreted
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I mean, I'm just sort of imagining. I mean, I guess when the Big Bang Observer telescope is online, like at the end of the 2030s, the one that can see the primordial, we'll be able to see the oscillations from the Big Bang, the gravity wave oscillations from the
Yeah.
Big Bang, then I guess you would get a background
Yeah.
gravitational wave view, and then you would see the ripples as they move through the various masses as they get distorted like waves. That would be amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting there with neutrinos is sort of the next one that's going to come up is the all sky background of neutrinos, and then we'll get to an all sky of gravitational waves, which will be amazing as well.
The cool thing I saw this week is there's now scientists who are just like, ugh, we haven't found large dark matter. Let's look for small dark
Yeah.
matter. And so while places like the CERN collider are working to go to higher and higher energies to look for larger and larger mass forms of dark matter, there are a variety of researchers, for instance, out of Lawrence Berkeley labs, who are just like, we're going to look for tiny stuff because maybe we're just looking all the wrong places. And I'm intrigued to see what they see because so far we're not finding anything that the standard model hasn't accounted for.
Yeah,
And
it's a wonderful time that
yeah,
that up until this point, like even with the whole Large Hadron Collider, it was developed to confirm what people were almost certain would be found, which was the Higgs boson. But it
yeah,
has been unable to do all of its other jobs. And so now they're saying, like, do we build the monster version
or do we
of the
give up on
LHC?
supersymmetry, which
Or do we
I'm good with?
Yeah, or do we start to come up with, or just start from scratch and think of new creative ideas and let many different ideas get tested? And I think
Yeah,
that is very exciting. It's
yeah,
almost like a revolution in dark matter search, in particle physics, because now all of these things that had to wait for the Large Hadron Collider to get built, and there's a lot of people who are clamoring for this to happen, for them to not build a gigantic version of the LHC, to instead chase all these different paths to see what's out there.
yeah.
Very exciting. All right, we've reached the end of our hour, so let's wrap things up. Just a reminder, if you haven't already, go and join the weekly Space Hangout crew, wshcrew.space, if you want a great community to hang out with, who watch our shows and organize a lot of the live events that we do, executive producers of what we do. Join them, and they will help keep you entertained and someone to talk to over the long, dark summer hiatus. For 2 months.
Long, hot summer hiatus.
Long,
I don't
hot
think it will be dark.
summer hiatus, yeah. When we should all be out looking at the night sky.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks, Pamela. Thanks to all our moderators. Thanks to all our viewers. We will see you all for the last time this season next week. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.